Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me this afternoon on this very randomly scheduled short notice test. If you participated in my previous webinar, you know that we had some technical issues with the quality of the video. I have changed the technology. We're now using YouTube Live, and we will see how this turns out. So today's a benefit, if you will, for me at any rate, of this being short notice and few visitors, a few small audience, is that it exposes a mistake I made. What do I talk about all the time? Backing up. What did I forget to set up on my laptop when I rebuilt it about a month and a half ago? Regularly scheduled backups. So what I'm going to walk through today to begin with is actually installing and setting up Macrium Reflect free, and then configuring it to run a backup periodically. I'll talk about the choice that I'm making, why I'm making that specific choice, and how it might perhaps be different than what you might make. And then also, we'll go ahead and fire off a backup. I should be able to take questions. The problem that I'm seeing right now is that I can't tell if I'm visible in chat. My YouTube Live interface here is telling me that unable to connect to chat. Please try again later. The problem is I don't know how to try again later without actually tearing down this entire video and in fact invalidating the URL. So we may be in a situation where I might not be able to take questions. We'll have to see if that's going to work for me later or not. Let me try one other thing real quick here to see if I can make that work. If I can't, then we'll have to see. So I've put a couple of test comments in the chat. If somebody watching, if you've got an opportunity to throw something into the chat that should be available alongside the live video, I'd appreciate your testing that out and seeing if we can make that happen. So what I want to show you here is my machine. This is the machine. Unlike many of my other videos, this is actually a real machine, a physical machine. It's actually a laptop sitting off to my left here. We're actually reviewing it over a remote desktop connection so that I can fire up the video streaming software that I'm using. The machine itself has been configured with a lot of different pieces of software installed. You can tell I've got Office installed here. I have a lot of radio programming applications here. This is a laptop. It is intended to be portable. It is something that I carry with me when like this afternoon, I ended up programming some radios for a nonprofit that I work with. So this is the machine that I carry around with me whenever I travel. This is the machine that comes with me as well. So there's a fair amount of software installed on it, perhaps most importantly Dropbox and OneDrive, which I will talk about also in a little bit. So what I want to do is go ahead and get started with the Reflect. Good. Somebody did say hi, Leo. So our chat is available. So later on, when we are done, or when we have the time in the in setup, installation, and so forth, or the actual backup using Macrium Reflect, I'll be able to take questions if you happen to have any. So let's see. Let's go and focus entirely on my machine. And what I'll do is I'm going to run Microsoft Edge as my browser. For the record, there's about a 10-second delay between my speaking and you're actually seeing it. I'm actually watching it on the screen here on the side. So if I don't react to something as quickly as you might think, that's probably why. Anyway, I'm going to fire up Microsoft Edge. This is the new Chromium version of Edge. I'm going to cancel that one. And we are going to simply search for Macrium Reflect Free, because in fact that gives us one of the first things we need to watch for. Make sure that you actually get the free version of Reflect. You can see that the URL here, or the moniker for the URL, says specifically Reflect Free. With many pieces of software that have a free version, you are often offered a trial, which is different. It's a free download. It costs nothing to download, but you're only allowed to use it for a while before you have to pay money. This is truly free software. The free edition of Reflect is something that you can download and run without needing to pay anything. So you can see this is very clearly the free edition. It talks about the trial edition down below, but we're not going to do that. This is for home use. We don't need to enter an email because they've got my email address so many times already. I download from them fairly regularly. The little application that gets downloaded, Reflect DLHF, that's actually a downloader. In other words, it's a very small program that then downloads the eventual software. At this point, we are actually done with the browser. I'm going to go ahead and close that so that it's out of our way. If we wanted to download a different edition, I suppose we could, but it looks like free is the only option here. I'm going to go ahead and let it download to my downloads folder, and I'm going to go ahead and run it immediately after downloading. So we'll go ahead and get that started. You can see that this will probably take just a little bit longer than the little download of the downloader program, but it's actually downloading then the full Macrium Reflect free edition installation program. I'll let that go on here. I'm hoping that the quality of the sound and the video you're experiencing is sufficient. There will be a recording of this. Both YouTube will automatically make a recording of this and make that available. And then I also, in theory, have my own recording going on as this is happening, which theoretically would be the highest quality of all. The intent is that this is actually a 1920 by 1080 or 1080p HD video. We do want to let it run. And now the installer runs. You can see once again it's talking specifically about the free edition, so we are indeed installing the free edition of Reflect. We of course must accept the terms of their license agreement. I'm using the home edition. I believe if you specify commercial, it will actually say there is no free edition, you need to do a trial. I believe the free edition is only for home. I could be wrong on that, though. I do not want to register this. Again, this is an opportunity for them to know that you've installed the software. They will put you on a mailing list, which is not a horrible thing. They certainly don't spam you like crazy, but they do occasionally give you offers to sell their full product. Since I've done this so many times, I don't need to register. These are all options that, for the most part, you honestly don't care about. VI boot, sure, it's useful, I suppose. I've actually never played with it, and it's not necessary for what we're doing here. Installing the desktop shortcut, as you can tell, I typically keep a very clean desktop. This is not an unusual desktop for me. I'm going to go ahead and let it install the desktop shortcut just because we'll be playing with that almost immediately after the installation completes. Normally, I would uncheck it and just run it off of the start menu. So the installation, as you can see, was very quick. We'll go ahead and hit finish, and it is going to launch Macrium Reflect. So we have installed the free edition. That's really all there is to installing the free edition of Macrium Reflect. Now we're going to configure a backup. Now, the way I prefer to back up drives on my system, you can, if you like, I'm going to change the width of this a little bit so that it's a little bit easier to read. You can, if you like, say, create an image of the partitions required to back up and restore Windows. What happens there is Reflect will make some assumptions about how your system is set up. And 99 times out of 100, heck, 999 times out of 1,000, those assumptions are correct. I'm more of a control freak, so I want to actually select the disks that are going to be backed up. So I typically select image selected disks on this computer. Now you can see I actually have only one disk on this computer. This is where we get into something that is very specific to me, useful for you. I do not have an external disk attached to this computer. What I'm going to do instead is back it up to a network location. And the way I'm going to do that is over here on the ellipses on folder. I'm going to open that up. And then in the resulting list, click on network or expand network. In theory, that should bring up a list of the machines that it can find that are here on my local network. Since it isn't, there we go. So Noten XPS 15 is the machine we're actually looking at. So a machine does appear in its own network list. Noten 2020 is my desktop machine. It's actually the machine that is currently running the video streaming software. So I'm going to expand that, and you can see that I have two drives shared out. Networking and doing network sharing is something that is probably beyond the scope of what I want to cover in this video, but it is something that I know a lot of people have questions on and something that I do want to attack in a future video, perhaps a live video. So what I want to do, C is the internal drive of my desktop machine, but D is in fact the external drive. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And you can see that there are, in fact, a bunch of different folders on that machine. I'm going to go ahead and click on Macrium Backups. The reason I'm selecting that folder is that I do, in fact, run Macrium Reflect on my desktop. It backs up my desktop every night. So there's already a folder where I'm placing the backups there. Now, if you look carefully, you can see that rather than a drive letter, what is being shown here in the folder is double backslash Noten 2020 backslash D backslash Macrium Backups. That's what's referred to as a UNC Path. I think it's Universal Naming Convention. What that allows you to do is to access a share that normally you would connect a drive letter to, right? Normally you would do something in Windows File Explorer that would assign a drive letter like F or L or something so that you would access the contents of the D drive on my other machine using a different letter on your local machine. Like I said, it's networking, it's confusing. This notation does not rely on there being a drive letter assigned. This turns out to be important for me because what's going to happen is I'm going to set up an automated backup, and that automated backup is going to run periodically whether or not my machine is at home. If it's at home and that Noten 2020 is accessible on the local network, the backups will happen normally. If, however, I'm traveling and the machine is unable to connect to that local machine Noten 2020, then it's going to basically not back up. The backup will fail, which is fine. I mean, I'm traveling. I'll probably be doing something else with respect to backing up when that time comes. So I've specified what I want to back up, which is the entire source drive. That's this checkbox here off to the left. I could, if I wanted to, select individual partitions, but in reality, I want to back up the entire hard disk, which includes everything you see here. I've specified a destination, this folder on another machine on my local network. If you had an external drive, you would specify the drive letter, colon, of the drive that you were backing up to. Use the image ID as a file name, which is fine. I'm okay with that. There really aren't any advanced options that I would recommend you take a look at. I will often change the compression to high just to make the file a little bit smaller. In a case like this, it does slow it down a little bit, so I don't want to slow down the backup. File size, you don't need to worry about most of the time. There are file systems like FAT32, or I'm sorry, I think FAT16, where they actually have a limit on the size of individual files. We don't have that limit here, but this is where you would deal with it. I'm not going to password protect my backups. If I wanted to, this is where I would do it. I'm also not going to auto-verify. What auto-verify does is immediately after the backup is completed, it turns around and starts reading the backup that it just created to make sure that it matches what it thinks it wrote. I can, of course, add comments to the backup. There's no need in this case. And I can, of course, shut down the machine when the backup is complete. Again, not something I want to do here. So I've not changed any of the advanced options. Next. So this is what they call the plan for your backup. This includes two pieces of information that Reflect takes a look at. One is the schedule. And then the other is how long you want to keep the various backups that are available. So there are options. You can set up different backup combinations of full and differential and incremental. Because this is the free edition, you won't have incrementals available to you. If we were to choose one of those, it would complain. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and create my own schedule. We'll add a schedule. I'm adding a full. What I'm going to do for this machine is once a week on Sunday at, I'll just randomly pick 4 in the morning. And that start date would actually be tomorrow, the 22nd. Now, that's all I'm going to do with this machine. This machine is going to have a full backup taken once a week. Why is that enough? Well, it's enough for me because all of my data is in Dropbox or OneDrive. So the only thing that's really changing on this machine is the installed software and any configuration changes I might make to that installed software. Once a week is a fine trade-off. I could do it every day. It's what my desktop machine does. But for my laptop, given the characteristics of how I manage my data and the files on the machine, this is a fine, fine trade-off. So we'll go ahead and give it that weekly schedule, full backup, 4 o'clock in the morning, every Sunday of every week, starting tomorrow. Data retention rules. Since we're not doing differentials, I'm not going to have it even check for differentials. Backup. What the retention rules do is it basically allows you to tell Macrium Reflect to delete backups older than a certain amount. So for example, in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to have it keep 4 backups. I forget what this is. Yeah, you can have it keep for X number of days, X number of weeks, or X number of backups. In my case, if I'm doing, given how I described this machine as being primarily about the programs that are installed on it, I'm okay with keeping basically 4 weeks worth, in this case, 4 backups worth of images should I need to go back. If all of a sudden 5 weeks later I decide I needed to go back to something 5 weeks ago, I'm going to be out of luck. That's okay. That's a decision I'm willing to make. If I don't realize that there's a problem within a month, it's probably not really that big a problem. So full backups, I'm going to keep 4 of them, which means that Macrium will delete the oldest ones automatically for me. One of the interesting questions is, when should it do that? Now, that's what this purge question is all about. Run the purge before the backup, or, as it is now, after. If you are really tight on space, in other words, if you really only have room for, say, maybe 4.5 backups, you want to do the delete first so as to make room. But in my case, I have lots of space on that drive, so I'm happy letting the backup complete, and only when it completes successfully is the oldest backup image deleted. And then you can also have it look specifically for disk space. I'm going to turn that off because honestly, the other edition of Macrium Reflect that I have running on my desktop that is also writing to this same hard drive is managing disk space as well. So we'll hit next. Here's a summary of everything we have decided so far. At the top, what it is we're imaging, the options we've selected, these operations 1 of 6, these are each of the partitions that it's found on that hard disk and how it's going to be backing those up. And I'm going to click Finish. Now, some of the magic. I'm not going to run this backup right now. The important thing that we just did was to configure a backup schedule. And I want to save that backup and its schedule as an XML backup definition file. In fact, I'm going to call it My Weekly Backup, spelled correctly for whatever reason. I have a thing about spaces in file names. I'm not a big fan. They can cause confusion. So that's why it's My Weekly Backup, all mushed together. And I'm going to save it. It's now confirming that it can get access to the external hard drive, or in this case, the network location that it's going to be writing those backups to. And yes, we're doing this live. So it needs some credentials to do this. There are 2 kinds of credentials. The ones that you really want to use are the same credentials that you use to log in to either of those machines. Either the machine that you are logged into currently, or the machine that is you are connecting to. And I'm going to have to take a quick look in another window. This will be interesting. Hopefully you won't see this. I need to go grab my Microsoft account password, because that's what I want to put here. And of course that's not going to work. This is the risk, if you will, of doing something live, is that you run into unexpected problems that occasionally will cause you to have to take some unexpected actions. So off screen, hopefully off screen, I have my password, because of course, being who I am, I have this nice, long, complicated password that you can see it's a very long password. As you can guess by the rate at which I typed it, it's actually a passphrase. And we're happy. So this now means that Reflect is configured to run things once a week on Sundays. If we take a look at the scheduled backups, you can see that it is listed here. myweeklybackup.xml, which is the file that contains everything we configured for this backup, is now set to run a full backup at 4 a.m. every Sunday starting tomorrow. It hasn't run yet. Let's fix that, shall we? If we go to backup definition files and just click on that one that we have, myweeklybackup.xml, there are 2 different ways to deal with it. You can, of course, click on Run the Backup Definition, or, as I, for whatever reason, I tend to do, I tend to right-click on it and say Run Now Full. So, this is the portion of the show where things get really, really boring. Because what's going to happen now is Reflect is going to back up this hard drive to my external network location. In the past, it hasn't been particularly slow. It's actually not a huge hard drive. There's not a lot on it. So there's not a tremendous amount of work for Reflect to do. But in this case, it is doing it over the network. So it could take a little bit of time. The one thing I will point out and this bugs me no end, is that the time remaining will vary dramatically during the backup. By that I mean it's going, right now it's telling us 2 hours and 59 minutes, 3 hours, right? The first transfer, or the first progress bar, is all about whatever it's doing right now, whichever partition it's working on right now. So you can see it actually has started the image up here at 1625 is when it started, so 4:25 in the afternoon. It has saved this partition, the ESP. It has saved another partition, and it is now saving the partition C:. C: is, of course, the biggest partition we have on this machine. So that's what this top bar is all about. It's telling us that, I'm sorry, that's what the bottom bar is all about. A little confusion there. The current progress. So whatever the current item it's working on is this progress bar here. And again, it's telling us 3 hours before it's going to be done with the C drive. My guess is it'll be less than that. The overall progress is the time remaining will include not only the C partition, but whatever other partitions. Remember, there were 6 when we started, and we're only on partition number 3 right now. So there are 3 more partitions after the C partition that it still has to back up. So the overall progress is including an estimate for how long it's going to take those partitions to back up. I'm going to go ahead and put myself back on the screen. So what we're looking at then is essentially what we'd be looking at for some time. And no, normally if I were making a video out of this for the website, a standalone edited video that wasn't live, this is the part where I'd fast forward you. But since we are doing this live and this is real, it's not something that I just can't change time. Sorry. So it's going to take some amount of time, more time than I think we want to be hanging out here online live. If you have questions, please type them into the chat bar or into the chat window now. I will attempt to address any of them that come up. Anything, honestly, anything. It could be about this backup, some of the decisions that I've made, some of the things that you may or may not have seen on screen as I went through them, or it can be about anything else, askleo related or not. I will describe real quickly the setup that I've got running here, since it is kind of interesting and quite different than the tool that I used last time. The window you're looking at is actually using Chrome Remote Desktop from my desktop machine to the laptop that, as I indicated, is sitting here off to my left. That is basically my preferred remote desktop application these days because it's free, there are no limits, it's functional enough. As you can tell, it's actually working in Edge. The browser that I have this hosted in, you can't see the top and the bottom of the browser window, but it's actually running in Edge. It's the Chromium version of Edge. So that means that Chrome Remote Desktop will work not only in the Google Chrome browser, but also in Chromium-based Edge. I think it'll work in Opera. I think it'll work in Brave. I think it'll work basically in any of the Chromium-based browsers that are out there. My experience so far is that, of course, it does work in Google Chrome, and it's working well in the Chromium version of Edge. The software that I'm using to run this, well, you're seeing what you're looking at right now live is, of course, a YouTube live stream. This is the first time I've done a live stream using YouTube. My sense is that it is a higher quality than I've been able to provide in the past. I'm hoping it's working well. Like I said, I'll be looking at the recording, and if you who are watching right now would care to leave a comment in the, either a comment on the video, I suppose, down below, but there is supposed to be a chat window, a real-time, a live chat window available to you. If you just want to let me know if it looks any good, if you can hear me fine, that'd be great. So how am I connecting the two? I'm using software called OBS. I believe it's called Open Broadcast System or something like that. In fact, since the backup is going, there is no reason you can, of course, do other things while the backup is going on. I've got it displayed here simply because that was the purpose of this webinar. But if I go and fire up the browser, and close that out. I believe it's obsproject.org. Let me just go and do a search. Open Broadcaster Software. There we go. That's the tool that I'm actually using to stream this video. It's allowing me to do the various transitions that you've seen. For example, right now you're looking at my head in the corner. I can make that go away. Here, it's just me on the screen. And of course, I can switch you back to just the webcam. I'm sorry, just the screen capture screen. The title bar is on there. That's part of what's going on with the OBS software. So it's handling all of that for me and allowing me to make these changes in real time. Normally, when I'm doing a not live video, these are all things that I'm doing in a video editing program. So one of the differences here is that I'm doing this all in real time, live, as things are happening. And we can see that the backup, you can tell it's gone down from 4 hours to under 2 hours now for the current progress. As I said, the time estimates on these guys are often wildly off, depending on the software that you're using, but it's true even for Macrium Reflect. They will often be significantly off by an order of magnitude for a long period of time. I've seen them go up, then go down, then go up, then go down. I don't know what their algorithm is for making these kinds of guesses as to how long something is going to take, but don't rely on it. In fact, we're back up to almost 3 hours again, so you can see that it slowed down a little bit. At this point, I think, since we've not gotten any questions in via chat, I think I'm going to go ahead and call this good. What we've done is we have downloaded and installed Macrium Reflect free edition. We have then configured that free edition to actually perform a full image backup of my laptop once a week, every Sunday at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then we went ahead and ran one of those backups immediately, right now. And that's what we're looking at on the screen. One question that might come up is that when since we've run one now, will it do another one tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock? And the answer is yes, it should. The fact that we ran one now is immaterial to the schedule. And is in fact something you can do at any time. If you feel that you need to create a backup, if you need to make a backup of something, an image outside of its regularly scheduled time, you can always come to the backup definition files and just right-click on it and say Run Now. And as you saw when I did that, there were options to run not just a full backup, but also differential and incremental if that's what you're interested in. Again, with the free edition of Reflect, incrementals are not available. I'm not sure. I think differentials are. I could be wrong. But fulls definitely are. And as you can see, using only the free edition of Reflect, we are able to schedule regular full image backups, which is, to my way of thinking, huge. That is something that at a minimum people should be doing on a regular basis. So with that, I am going to go ahead and, a couple of questions, yay. Audio is great, video is also fine, but I have to go to full screen to read your desktop, old eyes. Yeah, I understand that. It's one of the dilemmas that I have here. I am recording at full 1080p, so this is actually 1920 by 1080, depending on your screen. That could be scrunched down by default. In fact, I think that YouTube needs you to actually go full screen before you'll actually see it in its highest resolution. That is one of the trade-offs that we have to make here. Larry Taylor, hi, I was late. Will this webinar be posted on your site? I hope so. That's the intent. It's part of this being a test. At a minimum, I believe the YouTube video that you're looking at right now, once I finish, may take a couple of minutes, but then will also then immediately be available for replay. My intention is to take the video that I'm recording here on my machine and turn that either into a true live replay, full replay, like the YouTube version, or I might take a few minutes and edit out the chit-chat. Make it more of a condensed version that gets to the point, that doesn't take, in our case, 36 minutes to do essentially what boils down to about 15 minutes worth of work just to download, install, and get the backup started. So that's the plan anyway. So the long answer is I hope so. The short answer is yes. With that, I think I will bid you all adieu. Thank you very much for being here with me today. I wish you peace and obviously good health as things progress in the world today. So take care, everybody. I will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.